But so on Thursday's podcast, I picked the Chiefs, I think 37-27.
Okay.
The more I thought about it after that, and when I wrote my game prediction column, I switched to the Bucs, and I predicted, I'm looking for the score, 27-24, a bit of a closer game. But the reason that I switched was, look, I just got to thinking about it, and so many people have followed me through the years, and they know how I obsess over offensive line play. And I think that line play both ways, defensive lines, offensive lines, I think it really determines most football games. And at the end of the day, once I sat and I looked at the Kansas City offensive line with 4 of their 5 preseason starters out, everybody except Austin Reeder, the center, who was benched during the season. Once I looked at it, who they were putting in, Mike Remmers at left tackle, who I remembered the last time he was in the Super Bowl with the Panthers against the Broncos in 2015, he was horrible. He gave up 3 sacks, 7 QB pressures in that game. It was one of the worst offensive line performances I've ever seen. That was when he was playing right tackle. Tonight he was playing left tackle. You had Andrew Wiley playing right tackle in this game, Wisniewski at right guard. It just, at the end of the day, I couldn't look myself in the mirror and say, like, if you believe these things about football, you can't pick the Chiefs. You can't.
Yep.
And so basically I came down to, unless Patrick Mahomes is superhuman, and has a performance like we've never seen before out of a quarterback, the Chiefs should lose this game. And that ended up happening. Mahomes tried to be superhuman, I think, at times, and I think he almost pulled off some plays. But at the end of the day, Nick, they just could not protect them. And the story of the game, my number one headline for this game was the Bucs defense annihilated the Chiefs. I mean, for Patrick Mahomes through 3 quarters to complete 14 of 28 passes for 114 yards and an interception, a 45.8 rating through 3 quarters.
Yeah.
They're never going to win a game that way. So to me, that was the story of the game.
I picked the Chiefs. I stuck with the Chiefs, and I was wrong. I was dead ass wrong. And here's the issue. I think all of us, and I tweeted this a little bit ago at Nick C Radio, I tweeted, we all expected the Chiefs' offensive line to be overwhelmed in this game. That was not a surprise. We were talking about it all week long. The offensive line is banged up. Starting tackles are going to be out, et cetera, et cetera. But here's what I did not expect. Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy to be atrocious. Their game plan, Greg, I didn't understand any of it. I mean, honestly, in the first half, they had 5 carries from their running backs. You're going against a 2-deep defensive look. Obviously, the Tampa Bay Bucs walked into this game tonight and said, hey, we're going to make sure we don't get beat over the top. We're not going to give up big plays. We're not going to give up explosive plays. And so they were a little light in the box. They had guys set way back to try to stop those explosive plays. And the Chiefs just did not want to try to run the football. And they failed to run the football, even attempt to run the football. And then you saw they go into halftime. They come out of halftime. What they do the first drive? They run the ball. They run the ball. They ran the ball 3 or 4 times on that drive in the third quarter to start the second half. They get 3 points out of it. They didn't run any screens. No wide receiver tunnel screens, no running back screens, no quick hit passing game. They let Patrick Mahomes out there to just dry. He was stuck. I mean, they made him a sitting duck with their offensive game plan, and they failed to adjust until it was way, way too late. So Levante David and Devin White, some of those guys in the middle of the field, they also dominated. They were physical with Kelsey. They doubled Tyreek Hill. I thought when you look at this, the takeaway from me is that Tampa's coaching staff out-coached Andy Reid and the Chiefs. And we just, going beyond the game plan, Andy Reid, to me, I mean, you're calling timeouts at the end of the first half, giving Brady more time, made no sense to me. I know I saw you tweet about this. 2-minute warning. You come out of the 2-minute warning, you're throwing the football instead of running the football. Listen, soak the clock, score points, get into halftime. Don't give an opportunity to Tom Brady to do exactly what he did, drive down the field and hurt you. And I thought Todd Bowles, who is always aggressive, we thought that Todd Bowles was going to blitz. He blitzed 5 times tonight. He said, nope, my front four is going to be able to get after Mahomes. I don't have to blitz that much. Don't have to worry about it. How many times did we see this offense from Tampa chuck the ball downfield with, high-risk throws? They didn't do a ton of that. They attacked with Gronkowski. And so I thought that the Bucs coaching staff did a good job. Leftwich and Bowles, I thought did a good job tonight.
I do think Leftwich did a really good job, and Bowles did obviously. He did a tremendous job, and he was one of my biggest factors in this game. But where I'm going to disagree with you, Nick, is outside of, and we'll get into the scenario before the end of the first half, where I think that was my turning point. It was my second guess of the game, that whole scenario. Outside of that, I just disagree with the game plan and the offensive, that they got out coached. I just disagree with that because I don't care what kind of game plan you have. And they tried everything. They tried screens. They tried little quick hitters. They tried this and that. They tried everything. They did try to run the ball in the first half. It was the Bucs had the number 1 rush defense in the league. They knew
5 carries from the running backs in the first.
Yeah, but Nick, it wasn't going to do anything. And yes, it worked in the second half on one drive because the Bucs relaxed a little bit. They were up. They wanted to give them the run, just like the Patriots have in the past, just like the Raiders did earlier in the season. But to me, I don't care what game plan you have. If you don't have the Joes, you can't do anything. And they could not block. Nick, we came into this game. This is why I changed my pick. I knew they weren't going to be able to run the ball. That means they couldn't stay balanced on offense. They couldn't keep the guys at bay. I knew Bowles wasn't going to have to blitz to get pressure. That played out. They could not block anybody. I mean, Nick, I'm sorry, I don't care what the offensive game plan is not going to stop Patrick Mahomes from being pressured on 29 of 56 dropbacks.
I'm not saying that. Hold on. Don't be changing my conversation. Don't be changing what I'm saying here.
Okay.
I'm not saying that if they ran the ball, it was going to all of a sudden turn this into a Kansas City win. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is when your quarterback is getting killed, as you're mentioning, when he's getting killed and he's a sitting duck in the pocket, right? When he's getting pressured every single time, run the ball more than 5 times in the first half. Run the ball more. And I'm not telling you that they'd get 7 yards a carry, but it wasn't like Clyde Edwards-Helaire was useless in the first half when he ran the ball. He was getting 3-4 yards at a time. Give him the football. Maybe give Mahomes a 3rd and 4 instead of a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9.
You would have had Nick. You would have had to run the ball on the first 2 downs and get 3 yards each time, and to get into 3rd and 4. That's just not their game. You can make an argument that maybe the Chiefs weren't prepared to play left-handed and play this type of game. You could make that argument.
My point is about Tampa. That's precisely what I'm talking about with Tampa. Tampa Bay went into this game, right, and they did what they took everything that we expect them to do and they threw it in the garbage. They said, no, we're going to game plan for this team, for this specific
No,
game.
they didn't, Nick. They knew they had a bunch of bums on the offensive line. They knew from the week before against the Packers when they just rushed with 4 guys, and the Packers were only missing 1 offensive lineman, Bakhtiari. They got pressured the whole game. That was the difference in that game. The difference in this game was Brady got pressured 5 times, just like last week. 5 times, and Mahomes was pressured 29 times. That's the end of the game. That's the difference. You can't. The Bucs knew. Yeah, they pressure. That doesn't mean that's who they are. Bowles is an idiot. He knew he could get home with 4. That's what he did, and that was the difference in the game.
You can yell all you want. Doesn't make you right.
I am right.
Todd Bowles is an aggressive play caller. He's
not always.
I didn't say every single time. I'm saying
not against the Chiefs. I mean, not with when you have to double 2 guys.
He's an aggressive play. When you talk about what Todd Bowles is as a defensive play caller. I'm not saying 100% of the time. Let's not be disingenuous, Greg. Not 100% of the time. Not every play caller is the same play caller 100% of the time. But what Todd Bowles is, he's defined by being aggressive. He's defined by creating pressure.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
I've never thought of Todd Bowles as Blitzburg or anything.
He blitzes. He blitzes a decent amount.
A decent amount, yeah.
I talked to people in Tampa Bay all week long on my show, and we talked about him blitzing and him being aggressive. And I know that even Phil Simms said in the post game saying, hey, you expect Bowles to blitz more than 5 times. My point is this. They didn't blitz as much as you thought they were going to blitz. They weren't as aggressive.
No, that's just false. I did not expect them to blitz. He did not blitz.
Okay. I'm saying what they usually do. What they usually do. And
you just said you expected them to blitz coming into this game. I don't know if that's me or a euphemism for everybody.
I'm saying when you look at a Todd Bowles, I expected them to blitz more than 5 times. Yes, Greg. I expected them to blitz more than 5 times in this game. Going off of what Todd Bowles is a defensive coordinator, I expected them to blitz more than 5 times. Let's get beyond that. Bruce Arians in this offense. Again, if you look back at what they do, and maybe you'll disagree with this and yell out and do whatever you want to do, but when you look back at the season, what Tampa did an awful lot was run on first down over and over, and even against Green Bay. You can look at their first down play calling. It was run play after run play after run play. Tonight was different. When they got up and they were soaking clock, yes, they ran the football more, but I thought the coaching staff of Tampa, I thought they coached differently than what their tendencies have shown throughout the entire season, not in an individual game, if you look at the entire season. Now, Andy Reid, I thought he just had an awful night. I mean, beyond the play calling stuff and all that, beyond jumping down that rabbit hole, I thought he was bad. I thought using the timeouts at the end of the first half was atrocious. I thought that, again, I disagree about the offensive game plan. Throwing the football after the 2-minute warning to me made no sense. He gives the football back to Brady and company, and then he decides that he's going to call timeouts when Tampa looked like they were fine running the clock out. They weren't showing. They had 1 timeout left. They go out there, as a matter of fact, I think it was 55 seconds left in the first half, and they decide to run the football on first down with Fournette. I think it was Fournette. They run the ball, 55 seconds left, 1 timeout. To me, that's Bruce Arians saying, hey, we're really happy with the half that we just played. Let's get into the locker room with this lead. And here is Bruce Arians, who's like, here's Andy Reid going, no. We're going to get the ball back, and we're going to drive against Brady, and we're going to, sometimes you just got to say, okay, not a good half. Sometimes you see Belichick do that, where his team's been outplayed, and they might even have some time and a timeout or two, and Belichick will go out there and he'll just tell his guys, take a knee. He'll say, we're playing like crap, take a knee, we'll get into the locker room, we'll try to figure this thing out. And Reid tried to get it all back in the final minute of that second quarter, and it backfired, and it actually added to Tampa's lead going into the half, and I thought killed any hope for momentum for Kansas City.
Yeah, I want to get into that scenario in a second, but I just want to point out to you, just to counter, that I don't think the Bucs did anything different in this game. And one of the ways is you might look at a wide side pass or a short pass as a pass. I can tell you that offensive coordinators and play callers look at them as their running plays, their extension of the running game. And the Bucs came out on the first drive, ran the first pass short left to Godwin for 1 yard. That's a glorified running play. Fournette, run. Next possession, first play, Ronald Jones for 13 yards. Next play, Scotty Miller, left end for 3 yards. Then they come out again, next drive. Fournette for 3 yards. Fournette for 6 yards. Fournette for 6 yards. Like this was the same Bucs offense that we have seen the second half of the season.
You want to go tit for tat all night. I'm going to say this. I'm talking about the type of runs that they call. I'm talking about giving the ball to Fournette and going straight up the middle. The throw to Godwin is, yes, it's a glorified run play, but it's different than we're going to go in between the tackles right up the middle. The Scotty Miller run, which lost 3 yards, it's a different look early on in the downs. The first play of the game, I believe, was also with – I'm saying if you look at their offense and what they do, the vast majority of the time on first down, it's go out there and run between the tackles. That's what they over and over and over again. And I thought, yes, glorified run plays, whatever. They changed it up a little bit. They tweaked it a little bit. When you thought that, they were just going to do the same old, I didn't think they did it. I didn't think they did.
Nick, I understand. You made your point. I am giving you my counterpoint.
Which you already did, and we tried to move on, but you brought it back up.
Yes, because You kept net. Then we talked about the defense, so we argued about that.
I moved
now,
to Andy Reid, and you brought it right back. So go ahead.
And you made the point that, we'll also look at the offense. They did this differently. I'm pointing you at the they're not. In my opinion, and I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying, in my opinion, this Bucs team has been run-based, short passes. They take their shot, just like Tony Romo was saying in the game. Play action game. That's what they did. They stayed true to themselves, and because they could, and this is why I thought the Bucs were going to end up winning this game, is because they could play different ways. And if you can run the ball successfully, and in my opinion, Fournette and Jones, the two-headed monster, were more important than Brady in this game, that they were able to do that to keep a blitzing pressure defense off of balance was a huge factor in this game. And so, that's just where I came down on that. I want to go through quickly the second and third headlines that I have for this game. Brady, of course, number 2. Brady, of course, wins number 7. He wins his 5th MVP. I don't think anybody watching this game thought that Tom Brady was. Well, I mean, who do you pick? You can't pick anybody from the defense. You can't pick Todd Bowles, and not anybody had like 4 sacks in the game. So what are you going to do? But Tom Brady wins the MVP. Gronk had a big part in the game, which was great to see, and I'm sure great for Patriots fans. And the number 3 thing, the first half officiating. It was a story in the game. It will probably still be a story. I don't think it was the deciding factor in the game, but I do think it certainly factored into the fourth quarter being largely lost.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at this and I say to myself that we all kind of wondered what Brady was going to do with this team and how he was going to be able to put the pieces together, because I do think some of the late run was in the regular season was overstated, depending on, who they played against. Their schedule was really soft in the final month. And, the Washington win was okay. It's against Taylor Heineke. It's against a young defensive line. So I didn't put too much stock into that win. The win against New Orleans, I thought was a defensive-based win, and Drew Brees, just looked like garbage to me, quite frankly. And I think he's going to retire this week. I thought really the game that you looked at was the Green Bay game. And this defense, I understand, listen, that they've been good for the most part this year. I think sometimes their secondary takes chances. Jamel Dean takes chances. He can get beat on double moves every once in a while. But, their secondary is pretty good. Carlton Davis is pretty good. I didn't know if the one thing I would say when I was looking at this game this week was I wasn't sure if their safeties were going to play. I wasn't sure if their safeties were going to be healthy. Didn't seem like they had any issue, either of them. The Whitehead and Winfield, they looked fine out there. So, this is a defense that is very athletic at every single level. Yep. They're very fast. And this is something that we've talked about when we bring up the Patriots. The lack of speed and the lack of athleticism jumps out. And when you play against a team like Kansas City, what do you need? You need that kind of team speed on the defensive side, and that's what Tampa has. Again, I will disagree with some of the play calling stuff, and we'll disagree. We'll agree to disagree on that. I'll also agree to disagree on some of the Tampa stuff. But overall, the other thing that jumped out at me the other thing that jumped out at me watching this game was the physicality. And I thought that Tampa was much more physical, and you could kind of feel it in that game. I thought that, Kansas City, I know that you tweeted out, I think it was you, Greg, that tweeted out about Travis Kelce being somewhat of a front runner.
Yep.
And, we talk about Kansas City being so fast and athletic and fun to watch, but they're not an overly physical team. And I think when we look back at the Patriots matchups, one of the reasons why Belichick has decent, he has decent success against Mahomes in Kansas City, relatively speaking. When you look at the ability to be physical, to jam the guys at the line, to knock Kelce, and I thought we saw some of that from the Bucs tonight.
Yeah, without question. And I think their speed shows up in the physicality. I mean, they tackle hard. They get a lot of fumbles, which team speed shows up a lot in fumble stats. But, here's my thing with the Chiefs offense. And number one, I do think Kelce he's soft. He's such a front runner. And yeah, he made some catches after that later in the game. But you could tell there was a point midway through the third quarter where there was an interception and he's holding his head. And like you could just tell in his eyes, he had quit. It was over. And like that's the reason why he's never probably going to be viewed as a great guy. Like he'll have great stats or a great player, but it's just not going to happen for him because he's just not mentally tough enough. But I'm not ready to take that leap with the whole Chiefs team. This is what I saw as far as, and you're right, the Chiefs defense did get pushed around, but that was because they couldn't play the game on their terms, Nick. They are so used to part of their formula, and part of their defensive formula is like, hey, at some point we're going to go on a run, or normally we have the lead, and so now all of a sudden the team has to pass a lot. We can play sub a lot. The Chiefs are almost exclusively a sub package defense, and when you can get out there with a lead, and with two tight ends, and you can play power football like the Bucs can, like they can play multi-dimensional. They can go out there with 5 wide receivers, or they can go out there with 2 tight ends and push you around. So once the Bucs had the lead because of their defense, the Chiefs just could never play the game on their terms defensively, and that's why they look so porous, because part of their formula is the way the offense plays. And once they didn't have that, the defense got exposed.
Yeah, and I think you started to see, relatively early that Tampa got into a groove on both sides of the ball, but especially offensively. When the run game started to get going, then play action came into account, then Gronk came into account.
Yep.
There was a point where it looked like Kansas City was searching, and they were searching for most of the night, and frankly, they didn't have any answers. Spagnuolo had no answers defensively. Reed and Bieniemy had really no answers offensively, mostly because of the offensive line just getting chewed up. And they kind of look lost all night long. This game was the biggest surprise to me was obviously not the offensive line being overwhelmed. Again, we expected that to happen. I wasn't even surprised that Tampa won this game, but I was surprised how dominant Tampa was. Yeah, I thought it was going to be a close game. I thought you would have at least some of those explosive plays. And when we look at Kansas City, you can't forget what happened after they win their first championship, right? We remember what everybody was saying from this team. They were going on ESPN and they were talking about winning 4, 5, 6, 7 rings. Maybe this is the dose of reality. They had won, so many games over the past 2 years. They lost, one game when they weren't sitting Patrick Mahomes? When they played their starters, I believe they lost one game in the last, I don't know what it was, 28 or 29. I mean, this has been a machine. And to me, the machine kind of got flipped over tonight. And they had no idea how to respond and how to react.
Yeah, Nick, I get it. I just think this was in my opinion, and you're free to disagree, but I'm afraid to extrapolate anything from this one game, because I just think it was sort of like a cavalcade of events where, like I said, 4 of their 5 offensive line starters. I mean, they could get by with Eric Fisher at left tackle and sort of the trickle-down effect, but once he's gone and Mitchell Schwartz is gone and all these guys are gone, like they stunk on the offensive line, and I think that was the issue. Yeah, they're going to have to get better depth there, but I don't think it's any big a big storyline or anything to say about how they, and I'm not saying you say this, but some people will say it, and I've seen it on Twitter. Oh, well, they're frauds and they're front runners and they're not tough enough in this. And okay, you got the Chiefs this time. I'd like to see them, if they had a full offensive line or at least 4/5 of an offensive line, then I like their chances. And related to that, I wanted to ask you, get your input on this because you're Mr. Officiating. What do you think about the calls in the first half, and how much do you think it impacted the final score?
All right, first, before I get to that answer, I do want to circle back about what I was talking about, the 5, 6, 7 rings. It goes into the front runner kind of idea. It goes into when these guys get a little bit of pushback. I agree with you. Again, the offensive line is the beginning and end of this game, right?
Yeah.
But we're not going to talk about that. We could do this podcast in 3 minutes and say that. We could have walked out. Right?
I could talk about the offensive line the whole game. The whole pod.
Oh, I know. But if it comes down to that, it really, I mean, they got abused. what I'm saying is, when you have a team like Kelsey and Tyreek Hill too, look at Tyreek Hill. Oh, he didn't like the 2 fingers up in front of his face.
Yeah.
Oh, but he's
valid.
He's winning, and he can flip into the end zone.
Yep.
And that's kind of like, to me, respect the game a little bit more. And, winning 5, 6, 7 times, you're not paying attention to how much attrition means to a run like that. And that goes into the offensive line, right? To win 5, 6, or 7, to win back to back, you've got to be healthy. You've got to be good. You've got to be physical. And I thought some of these warts we saw tonight, and again, I think it's mostly offensive line. I'm not saying that's why they lost the game, but it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with it now when they come back. Now, to get back to the officiating, yeah, I thought the first half, listen, I thought it depends on how you look at this. If you're looking at this in a vacuum, many of those calls were the right call, right? A lot of the penalty flags that were thrown on KC were my issue is, and this is the same way I felt, about the Green Bay. I think it was Green Bay, Tampa, going back up ago, when Murphy Bunting is holding everybody at the top of their route, and they're not throwing flags.
And he's getting an interception that changes the game.
Yep. So when you look at this, the precedent in this postseason was they were mostly going to let the guys play. And then you get into the Super Bowl, and in the first half, the Chiefs have 8 flags thrown out?
8 for 95.
And the worst one was the Tyrann Mathieu interference in the end zone.
Awful call.
That ball wasn't catchable.
Yeah, I here's what I'll say about the officiating, and I'm not a big officiating guy, and I still think the Chiefs could have overcome it. I thought a lot of the stuff in the first half was horse crap. I thought that the push against Jensen hits the guy and then the guy hits him back. We're in the Super Bowl, all right? We've gone how many weeks of football? Let's just let the guys play. Unless somebody's punching somebody in the face or really trying to hurt somebody, like Ndamukong Suh did at the end of the game with Mahomes driving his forearm into his head. Let any of that ticky-tack stuff go. Now, as far as the holding, the one I think was on the interception where I think the interception for Brady, which was a huge play.
Huge.
Because they went on to score 7 points on that instead of turning the ball over. I think the flag happened on Evans, the ball wasn't even thrown to him. I hate those calls, and I hate them even more in the Super Bowl. The one deep down the field, down the sideline, which you knew was coming. You knew the Bucs were going to go. It was almost like the Green Bay thing all over again.
Yeah, I know.
What the hell are you doing? Why is he even behind you? But that being said, I haven't looked at a close replay. I don't know how close they showed it in the game, but I think there's some question on whether he even touched him or whether Evans just tripped. And unless it's clear and clearly evident, I would let that go. And then certainly the honey badger, the one in the end zone was atrocious. That ball, Brady was throwing the ball away.
Yeah.
And the ref has to.
It hit the wall. It hit the wall behind the end zone.
It hit the wall. I know Mike Evans is tall, and they like to let it go for those athletic reasons. But I think we need a point of emphasis in the offseason. We need to bring back the uncatchable ball thing. It was a big thing in my childhood. Maybe you're a little young for it, but it was all the time. All of us, we all grew up, even in playing touch football out in the street. We'd all go like this because it's uncatchable.
Yeah.
You never see that anymore. It's time to bring it back.
Yeah, and the hold that was called, you mentioned this, it was on Brady's pick. And by the way, I had an over 1.5 online.ag. I had an over 1.5 interceptions. Mahomes' interception with about 90 seconds left cashed me in, baby, with the over 1.5 with his 2 picks.
Look at that.
But that Brady pick should have been a pick.
Yep.
And when you look back at that hold, here's the other issue I have with that call. Not just that the ball wasn't thrown towards Evans' way. The other issue I have with the call was that at the top of the route, Evans clearly dismissed the defensive back.
Yep.
At the top of the route, he
could have made the play.
He threw him off.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's one of those things where, if you're going to call the hold, you also have to call it on the offensive player. And to me, just don't throw the flag.
Yeah.
Both guys are grabbing both. I saw this tweet. Gene Steratore tweeted out this week and said, watch out for this. He said, watch out for 2 things. He talked about Kansas City and how they're pretty handsy or whatever and all that stuff. But he also talked about the physicality of the receivers and tight ends of Tampa, and to kind of
Mhm.
watch out for that back and forth hand fighting. And I thought that was clear as day, where Evans throws a defensive back and they call the hold instead of the offensive pass interference. If you're going to call both, or just kind of, just say, hey, forget about it. But listen, I mean, the flags, again, Tampa still wins this game if it wasn't for the flag, because Kansas City also just continue to shoot themselves in the foot. The offside on the field goal attempt,
Yep.
just stupid mistakes that you cannot live with. You've got the drops. Travis Kelce dropped a huge third down catch that he had right in his hands. One of the amazing scrambles that Mahomes had. He finds Kelce, hits him right in the hands. He drops it. Then Mahomes makes that incredible throw when he's parallel to the ground, and it hits, the running back, I think it was Williams, in the face mask. It hits him right in the face.
Yeah.
And it drops to the ground. Like, you can't have drops. You can't have those kinds of plays in the biggest game, because they're just going to come back and bite you in the ass.
Yeah. Last thing on the officiating, and then we'll talk about our friends from Bet Online and get